Thank you for joining me for this special Christmas hymns Q&A. And earlier this week, I asked our followers, as church pianists and as pianists, what are some questions you have regarding playing Christmas hymns? And you guys asked some amazing questions. So today, I'm gonna do my best to answer those in a quick and effective way, giving you an idea that you can implement instantly. Now, if you're looking for more in-depth information and you want to dive even deeper into conversations and topics that I'm going to discuss today, or maybe some of these ideas might be a little bit more advanced, go ahead and check out our two playlists on YouTube, the hymn playing playlist and the church pianist playlist. We have a lot of free tutorials on there. But you can also head over to newmerciesmusic.com, where you will find workbooks that deal with how to play hymns for a congregation and creating congregational accompaniments, dealing with modulations or changing keys and how can you effectively do that, chord substitutions, and much more. So head on over there and look at our resources that we have available for church pianists under our shop page. If you're looking for more one-on-one personalized training, I do offer a 7-week weekly training for church pianists. It's a session that you can sign up for, and our next session is starting in the new year. You can check that out as well, or we have individual coaching calls available at various lengths to help you better your skills as a pianist. So without further talking, let's jump into your questions and let's work on some Christmas hymns. All right, let's get started on answering your questions about Christmas hymns. And today I'm going to start with the first question in regards to Away in a Manger and some ideas on improvisation. Now, I'm going to hit some high points, but I'm not going to go into major detail on this hymn because that would take a longer video. But I do want to give you some ideas that you can include on each verse. So I'm going to talk through each verse and maybe some thoughts. As I go through some left-hand pattern ideas, if you're looking for a visual on that, we have these patterns in our left-hand patterns for hymn playing as well as our creative patterns for Christmas hymns, and those are both on the website. They are under the Church Pianist resource page on our shop page, so you can find those there. But to start off, Away in a Manger is more of like a lullaby, so I'm going to think more sweeping up and down the piano at first. And so that might mean that I'm using more arpeggiated chords where I'm utilizing 16ths and 8ths. So it could be something like this. To moving that left hand. Now, if you're more advanced and you can move that left hand freely, and those are some ideas you have, then I would also think about more ways to connect the melody in the right hand. So I really spent time focusing on that left hand for that one, but maybe in your right hand, you can focus on both of these ideas. So in my left hand, adding in some special ways to connect the melody or to tweak the melody a little bit. I did some of that, but let me go back and do that again and show you some other alternate ideas that you can utilize in this right hand along with flowing the left hand. Passing tones or scale type motion. So I'm working my way to that next melody note. But that's just a kind of a first verse overlay of maybe something that you could do. So now if we look at that second verse, let's talk about a more right-hand focused idea. So that one was more left-hand focused, where we were flowing, and then I showed you some quick ideas for connecting the melody and some ways that you can change up that right hand. But let's talk about a more right-hand focused 16th pattern. So instead of the left hand being the focus of the 16th, now let's take the right hand and we're gonna do something similar to this. A 16th pattern with the melody. So my melody is going to be the first part of that 16th pattern, and then this can be done alternate ways. So the biggest thing is when we deal with 16ths, we're in the time signature of 3/4. I'm going to be playing 4/16 per beat. Most of a way in a manger is going to be quarter notes. Sometimes you'll have that dotted quarter note rhythm and eighth note, and that's where this pattern might get a little tricky if you're not naturally feeling it. So let's talk in terms of the quarter notes. For every quarter note, you're gonna play 4/16. So maybe let's just talk about quarter notes for right now. Here's my melody. So instead of me just playing the melody, I can do melody, go down an octave, play another tone from the chord, and then double the melody. Okay? So that's where I'm going down an octave to double the melody, playing a single chord tone in between, and then hitting the melody on top again. And that's going to give you four notes to play. Now you could do a different idea where you play all the notes of the chord and kind of keep your hand more tight. So here's my chord, and instead of me just playing all the notes blocked, I'm playing all three and then doubling the melody on top. That one. Now the last verse, as we build into this one, this is a big one. This is a great Christmas pattern to use, and it's a really simple one. So let's talk more about the left hand. My right hand will do more 4-note chords, octave melody, filling it in. Focus more on that. My left hand, I'm going to do an 8th note pattern where on beat 1, or if the chord changes halfway through the measure, but on beat 1, I'm going to play the octave of whatever chord I'm in, and I'm going to bring that left hand up and play a chord higher up. Based on wherever my right hand is, I'm going to try to get it as close to that right hand as possible. And you can play just the 3 notes of the chord, or you can add a little bit shimmer to it by changing out the 3rd of the chord and using the 2nd of the chord. So if we're in F, the 3rd would be A, the 2nd would be that G. Okay, and so you can kind of do whatever inversion you want. So let me demonstrate that one for you. Going back, watching that video, and if you find something that I wasn't necessarily explaining, watch it again and look at what I'm doing and try to duplicate it. But I hope that gives you some alternate ideas to Away in a Manger, maybe some ideas that you hadn't already used. Again, find those handouts on our Church Pianist resource page, which will go into a lot of detail on those left-hand patterns that I used. So there were a lot of questions in regards to the minor Christmas carols such as O Come Emmanuel, also God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. And so let me kind of answer all of those questions in one tutorial for O Come Emmanuel, and then I'll go to one dealing with God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. And then I'll also hit on a question after that regarding transitioning or modulating from major to minor, which can be a lot of fun, and I'll give a really simple way to do that. So let's talk about O Come Emmanuel, just ways to play this. What are some ideas? So when you deal with this hymn in particular, O Come Emmanuel has a lot of beautiful chords, but transitions chords very rapidly. What does that mean? So a lot of our gospel hymns will stay with a chord for maybe 2 beats or even longer. Like for instance, in the previous tutorial, Away in a Manger, we run that F chord for 2 measures, and then we went to B flat for a measure, and then F chord for a measure. So it's a little easier sometimes to fill in and add creative ideas on the spot while you're with a congregation when you have more time with that chord. But then when you come to a hymn where the chord is consistently changing and it feels like you're not having time to really think about that chord and what's going on there, sometimes it can be daunting to know what to add, especially these minors when we're not as comfortable playing in them or recognizing the chord. So a few things I would recommend for you is understanding what chords you're going to have available in the minor key. So if we talk about O Come Emmanuel, it is written in E minor. E minor is the relative minor key to the key of G major. If you're unfamiliar with those concepts, I would definitely recommend finding resources on that. Our chord substitution workbook is great. We deal with minors in there and chords and all of that. But there's also other resources that deal with key signatures, relative minors, and there are so many out there. You can definitely find something. Now, understanding that you are in that minor key and then recognizing what chords are available. So if we think about just the primary chords for the minor key of E minor, you have your 1 minor chord, you have your 4 minor chord, which is A minor, and then you have your 5-7 chord, or your major 5. A lot of times these minor scales are going to throw in that harmonic minor sound. And if you're not familiar with some of these terms, I'd recommend doing a deep dive into minor scales. But beside the point, understanding that you have this E minor chord, A minor, and B major. These are going to be the primary chords for the E minor, the key of E minor, but because it has a relative, you're going to find that O Come Emmanuel will also shift to the major scale. So it will actually go back and forth between some of this minor sound, but then utilizing the G major chords as well. So the key of G, primary chords are G, C, and D. So you're going to see in this hymn, you're going to see the E minor, you're going to see the G major, the A minor, the B major, C major, D major. Then with that in mind, okay, let's talk about just starting off with this hymn. One of the biggest things I would recommend when it comes to the minor hymns is get your congregation started with it. So try not to jump off like you're just jumping feet first and trying to throw in everything. Sometimes in these minor hymns, they might go slower. You might sing them slower than you think you're going to be singing. They might even go faster. And so get yourself started with a solid foundation. And so what I would recommend for that is start off with a full right hand with 3-note chords. And then what I love about O Come Emmanuel, there is a really nice bass motion already written in this hymn. So if you're struggling to know what to do, follow what they have in the bass. And when you see a walking bass, like for instance, right away, the bass is going to be O come, E. Okay, so if you notice what's happening here, right away we walk and then we're skipping over. So if you see those skips, a quick way to add to that bass, walk down to those chords. Instead of skipping, pass down. Okay, so we would have something like this. what my hymnal has as a bass line, but then I'm walking and moving to the next bass note. So once you get more comfortable with recognizing that, then in your left hand, you can really focus a little bit more on rolling and arpeggiating a chord and utilize your right hand to change those tones around. So just a little bit more of a flowing feel to that, rather than on the first verse where we talked about more of that blocked chord fill. Now, as you continue to move forward in this hymn, you can look at ways to even build even more by utilizing in the right hand, moving to the next melody note. So passing through, if there's any skips, work your way to the next melody note. Okay, so I'm moving my way around. But if we go on, maybe leading into the phrase that says rejoice, where it's very triumphant, you're going to lead in with that scale, which would really set up that rejoice really nicely. So you have... Okay, and then right there doing some sort of scale, however you want to do that. But then on the rejoice, here's a great idea for this one. I love this section here. You want to be strong and triumphant. So you have rejoice. I'm on a D major chord, and I'm going to come down and walk my hands in octaves as thirds. So let me explain that. If I have a D major chord, my left hand will play a D octave. My right hand will play the F sharp as an octave. Notice they're a third apart. I'm going to walk them up. So rejoice, walk them up. And then I'm going to do B minor chord here, and I'm going to do the same thing. Root, third. Okay, so those are a lot of alternate ways to play this. Let me put some of those ideas into context and play the thing all the way through, give you some more concepts that you might see as I'm playing, and then we'll move off of this one and go to God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. Okay, so let's move on to God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. And the question that was asked here on this hymn, it was asked first how to play it when it's sung really quickly, and then another follower asked some ideas on this hymn of how to improv on it, some things that you can use. So here's the thing with God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. Now in my hymnal right here, the one that I'm using, it is written in 4/4 timing, but I will say that you're gonna wanna feel this not in 4, but in 2. And what I mean by that is you're going to feel it almost like a cut time, because most people singing this song are going to feel it that way. So rather than it being 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that is a way that you can sing it, and it is written in the hymnal as 4/4, but you're gonna feel it a little bit more as a pianist like this. If you feel that one, it's a little bit more like the strong beats 1 and 3 are almost like a 1 and 2. So you have 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1. It'll change your perspective on the hymn, and so honestly, some churches will sing at that speed. So it really depends on where you're at. If you're more of the church where you sing it more in the 4/4 feel and it's slower, then you're going to have more ways to fill in and more options. But if you are in the area where this is sung a little bit more fast, if that's how your church works with this one, then you're going to want to think in terms of 2 big beats. And so with that in mind, okay, let's just talk about basics first. Let's back it up all the way to basics without doing anything fancy. And let's just focus on filling in the chord on the strong beats in your right hand. And we're going to focus on the chords on the strong beats. And everything else, for the most part, you can kind of take it like it's a passing tone to the next chord. So I don't have to play unless I want to, and I have the ability to play that quickly and clean, right? So I'm going to focus mostly on those strong beats. So full chord on the strong beats. So notice my left hand, just basic. Rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. And I'm just kind of following that bass line, okay? Now, if that's something you're getting comfortable with and you feel like, okay, I can do that, I can keep it clean, I can keep up with it, then you can start to really think about some other alternatives to this one. So with this one, again, as in the previous one, for your left hand, you want to think about some bass movement. How can we walk to the next bass note? How can we get there and really connect that bass line rather than leaping all over the place? Now, leaping is not bad. If that's all you can do, that's great. It's going to be solid. It's going to be a nice sound, but maybe you're going to want to walk to it. So I'm going to slow this down a little bit so you can see what's happening. So right there, I walk down. And for that one, if you notice, I changed the rhythm on this one. My right hand was doing quarter notes, and instead of quarter notes in the left hand, I just tweaked it a little bit and I played a dotted rhythm in that left hand, which just gave a little bit more of interest to that spot. So that's not something you have to do. It's just something that happened as I was playing it, and I figured I would explain it to you. But I'm staying solid. It's going to keep up with what's happening. Now, as we go to that next phrase, there's some alternate ideas here you can do. You can keep up doing the same thing that we've talked about on those first 2 lines, or you can utilize some triplet ideas in that left hand. So it would look something like this. Triplet, 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 triplet. So that again is going to take a little bit more work, making sure that you're doing it. Now you can do it, I like to space it out using the root 5th root, or depending on what inversion I'm in, it might be the root in the 3rd, but I'm also walking it around. So to save us all from Satan's power. Idea is utilizing a rhythmic pattern in that left hand. And so let me demonstrate this for you. It'll give you a little bit of motion without you having to move all over the place and feel like you're trying to keep up with maybe the congregation as they're singing this. So it could look like this, where we play an octave with the 5th. Now, if you notice there, I stayed between that E minor and that B major. I kind of utilized it as a pedal tone, even though the chords did change, but it worked with what I was doing there. So that's an option for you. Now you can move it around to more chords if you want. there, I'm utilizing that pattern. I wouldn't use it for the whole time. It'll get a little monotonous, but it's a great way to give you something to do that's a little bit different. So those are some ideas on that one as well. So let me play a little bit of this chorus, just give you a few alternate ideas that you might like to hear. Okay, another question that I received was in regard to Away in a Manger as well, but this time not about improvisation ideas, but about chord substitution ideas. So I am not going to spend time explaining how I came up with these chords. I am just going to give you the chord names. I would recommend grab a pencil, your hymn book, and I'm going to tell you at what word I am playing what chord and just some ideas. This is not the only way you can do it, but it is an alternate way that you can play this hymn. There are many other options available, but just some ideas that I came up with this week to give you some fun chords that you might enjoy. With that being said, if you want to know more about chord substitutions and how I came up with these, check out our chord substitution workbook. Now, my Away in a Manger is in the key of F major, so that's the key I'm going to be speaking in, and those are the chords that I'm going to be talking about. So right away, if we get started, I'm going to be starting the pickup with a C augmented, and then as we go to the first part, or the second part of Away, I'm going to play an F major 7. Different from an F7, or if you want to call it the more technical term, F dominant 7. The F7 chord would be an F, A, C with an E flat on top. We use that, utilize that term often. You'll see it in lead sheets. That is going to add a minor 7th to that chord. But we are playing an F major 7 in the key of F. E is not flat, so I am going to play that E natural. So we have C augmented on Way, F major 7. On Manger, I'm going to play a C minor 7 chord with a melody on top. Then on No, I'm going to play the F7 chord. Okay, so the first one was the F major 7, F7 chord. Then crib, B flat. And then on the word I'm going to play a G major 7 chord, and then bed, F chord. Notice the inversion that I'm also doing that in. On little, I'm going to do a G minor chord, and I added the 7 to it. On Jesus, I'm going to do a C major chord, and then here on down, I'm going to play a B flat chord. Sweet, I'm going to play an F, and I'm going to do this in 2 parts. Sweet, I'm going to change it from a quarter note to 8th notes. So I'm going to play an F, I'm going to walk it up to a C sharp diminished chord, and then head D minor. Let me play that line again. The little, G minor, C major, B flat major, F, C sharp diminished, D minor. Back to a C augmented. And now I'm going to do an A minor 7, C minor, F, B flat, G major 7 again, F. And then next line, little, G minor 7, not major this time, minor. On Lord, A minor, and then on Jesus, D minor, asleep, the first part, F, G minor, sleep, and then here we're going to have a C in the bass, and I'm going to throw in, there's a technical term for it, but I'm just going to make it easy on you, melody with the B flat in my right hand, C in my bass, play the whole thing again, okay? And I would recommend going back through, pausing it, listening to it, but here's how I would play this one. question that was asked, which is a great question, was in regards to modulating or transitioning from a major to a minor key signature. Now, I'm going to give you two quick alternatives, but there are numerous options. So if you are more advanced, chord progressions, there are so many ways to get from a major to a minor that is unique. And a lot of that comes with playing around with different ideas that you may already know from music theory. But today I'm going to talk as quick as I can about basics. So the two alternatives I'm going to give you today that I think will be the easiest way for you to transition would be, first, when you're dealing with a major and a minor, put your hymns together in what we would call relative keys. So when we deal in relative keys, let's just talk about the ones that we were kind of working through already. We, Three Kings, God Rest You Merry Gentlemen, What Child Is This? O Come Emmanuel. All are written in E minor for this hymnal. Now, in your hymnal, you could find different minors that they're written in. So the relative minor to the key of E is G major, which means they're going to share common chords and common tones. So the easiest way to make this transition quick and effective is to pair this with a song in the key of G prior, and then go into the E minor. And that will work out really nicely. Or do E minor and go into G. Now, if you don't have enough songs to bookend this minor key in the key of G, that's completely fine. I'm going to tell you how to leave a minor key, how to get into a new key. But for now, if you can, let's start with the relative major before this minor key. So we would need to have a song in the key of G. Now, I have in this hymnal, and we have Hark the Herald Angels Sing, which is in G. Another one in this hymnal that is in G is also, I believe it was Thou Didst Leave Thy Throne, Infant Holy, Infant Lowly. So there's quite a few, there's a song in the air is one of them. So there's quite a few that are in the key of G. So if we're coming from the key of G, which is the relative major, to E minor, it's going to be a little bit more simple to work your way into that E minor. Now, one thing I want to remind you of would be thinking through a fast alternative to modulation. So let's put aside this key signatures for a second, and let's talk about a quick chord that we use to modulate. So when you're changing from one key to a different key, a very fast chord to use for modulations is the 5 or the 5/7 of the new key. So the 5/7 chord. So for instance, if we're going into E minor, the 5/7 chord is going to be that B major. Okay? Now you can use the 5/7, or you can also use the 5 where you suspend that 4, the 4 note here, which is that E, and then resolve it to the 3rd. Okay? So those are some alternates, and you might see me do both. So if I do both and I don't exactly clarify it, I want you to know that those are the two that you have available. So as you're coming from the key of G, we can transition into that 5/7 a little bit cleaner without a lot of jarring sounds, because they share really common tones. So if I'm coming from Hark the Herald Angels Sing, notice how easy that was. And it wasn't jarring at all. And what I did was I went from that G and I walked up to that B. Because this is a common tone in this G scale, since I'm going to be adding in that D sharp, I did that suspended chord, suspended 4. And I like that sound, okay? Now, I could make that more complex by adding in other chords into that, and there's a lot of things you can do, leading chords, but that's the fastest alternative. And we don't have time today to explain all the routes. But that is an excellent way to go from a major into a minor. Now let's say you're going from a minor into its relative major. So you're going from God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen into our key of G, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, or whatever song you have in the key of G. Again, we want to think about chord tones that they share, as well as ways to get to its 5 chord. So let's just kind of think. God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen ends on an E minor chord. E minor is the minor 6 in the key of G, the G scale. It leads beautifully to a minor 2 chord. The minor 2 chord is the A minor chord, which leads beautifully to the 5. So for this one, it's a little bit more of a transition, and it gives you a little bit more of an option here. But I would go from that minor 1 of E minor, transition to the minor 2 of G major, and then go to the 5. Whether it's 5-7, 5 suspended, or just straight 5. So let me demonstrate that for you, just kind of some ideas here. Okay, so now let's talk about what happens if you start with the relative major key, you go to the relative minor, but you don't have the relative major to go back to, okay? So I've given you how to get from the relative major to the relative minor. I've also given you how to get from the relative minor to the relative major. But let's talk about how do I get out of that minor key signature without going to its relative? What can I do? What are some alternatives? So here's a few options for you. One would be common tone. So looking at God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, the melody line. Here's my melody line on the last 2 measures. Joy ends on an E. So what I want to do is find a chord that has a common tone. Okay, so what are some common chords that have this tone in this? We have a C chord, C major, you have A major, and you have E major. So what we can do is utilize all of those ideas to transition. Now, what we're going to want to think about is, okay, what chord, if we use C major, is this the 5? What key is it the 5 of? Well, this is the 5 of the key of F. Okay, so here we go. I can utilize that to transition me to the key of F. Also, if I look at A is the 5 of the key of D. I can utilize that for the key of D. If I look at E major, E is the 5 of the key of A. So what I'm doing is I found what chords shared this E other than the minor, what major chords did, and how could I utilize those to be the 5 of a new key. That's the fastest route. There's other ways to do this, but this is the fastest route. So let's just take it. Let's utilize this. Let's turn this E minor chord into an E major. Let's just go right to that first off, which will add a nice touch to it. Again, this is the 5 of the key of A. So here's what this would sound like. So notice it was a really nice transition, and I did this suspended chord because it told me that something else was coming as opposed to me just ending on that major chord. And so I liked that idea. That's a beautiful way to get into a major key. So now let's talk about, okay, how can we use the key of, or the C chord going into the key of F? And I'm gonna go to a C chord. And then I'm gonna do the 4/5 for the key of F. So that's the B flat chord with the C in the bottom. Then to the C7. And now we have whatever song you want to go into. Now we're in the key we said was that A major chord. And for this one, we are going to transition into the key of D. It's the 5 of the key of D major. So let's go to Joy to the World. That one's typically written in D. And again, I'm going to use this one to make it a little less abrupt. I'm going to do the suspended 4. And then I'm going to go to the 4 over the 5, which is G over A, and then back to A. Okay? So it's kind of my mode of transportation here. So these are just some alternatives to transitioning from a major to a minor, and it can be challenging. So when you're doing this is definitely something you want to prepare for. If you're not comfortable just playing around with chords on the spot and understanding how chords lead into the next chord, then I would recommend really laying this out and preparing this properly. Thank you for taking the time to watch this question and answer video. And if this has helped you, please like this video, share this with others, let them know about our channel. We would greatly appreciate that. If you're looking for more help and more resources, check out newmerciesmusic.com, and we'd love to get those resources in your hands to help you as a church pianist.